Now we're coming into a level with a lot of bottomless pits. Or rather, bottomless pits at the very start of it, they can easily fall into. What you got right away is a Toho-vania bullet hell section. Like, it's not that bad. It is a fun challenge trying to dodge all the energy balls. But it kind of puts you in a rush because you're rushing to avoid getting hit by these things. And so it's easy for you to run right off the edge and fall into a bottomless pit because you're being rushed. See? And it's also pretty hard to avoid getting hit here because it's such a narrow area. But it's over with pretty quickly. One of the reasons that a lot of people like this game and think it's better than Unleashed, in spite of the fact that the level design is so blocky and claustrophobic, is because they think it has very consistent gameplay because you're playing as Sonic the whole time. You know, like, Sonic never turns into a werehog or anything like that. I don't know, I kind of count Wisps as alternate gameplay. I mean, like, you're literally transforming Sonic into someone else. Because you transform into the Wisp. It's not that different from turning into the werehog. And like, Sonic Adventure 2 had a huge amount of levels. But this game has you only play as Sonic. And yet it has a huge amount of levels because every level insists on having like 6 acts. Except for one that has only 3. But having so many different acts for a game that has you only play as Sonic, it feels redundant. And it really makes the padding feel obvious. Like at least with Sonic Adventure 2, you're playing with the different characters, so it didn't feel like padding that there's so many different levels. Because it was a new experience when you switched to another gameplay style. And having so many different acts where you only play as Sonic, it also makes it feel more like a Mario game than a Sonic game. Because Sonic has always been about having zones, and those zones would have 2 acts that share the same aesthetic and music. That way, you had multiple different aesthetics, rather than just grassland, caveland, and dungeon, and water level. But like, it's been a Sonic tradition to have only 2 acts, or 3 acts in some cases. So having so many different acts in this game, it just feels more like Mario to me. This is the Hover Wisp, and basically what you do is that you hold down the A button continuously in order to keep yourself hovering. It took a while for me to get a grasp on the controls because I kept mashing the A button instinctively. Like, you can't blame me for doing that when I'm used to Tails, who you have to mash the A button constantly to keep him flying. Like, it's just like in Tails' Adventure. I was able to get used to it, and I'm not sure why I didn't homie attack that enemy there when I was clearly, like, he was just deciding to double jump instead. Like, these guys are pretty cheaply placed. Yeah, I love the Hover Wisp. Especially in 3D. Oh yeah, and the Hover Wisp can do the Lightspeed Dash too, because for some reason they decided to rob Sonic of Lightspeed Dash and give it to the Hover Wisp. Like, not only is the Hover Wisp Tails, it's also Lightspeed Dash. The Rocket Wisp can also be seen as Tails as well, because he's like Tails carrying you and rocketing you upwards. Only it's better because, you know, you get sent up a lot faster. And then, well, the Laser Wisp doesn't really have any equivalent. But, like, and neither does the Purple Wisp. But there are some wisps. Oh yeah, like the wisp that gives you the spin dash. That's a perfect example. There are some wisps that are really just replacements for abilities that Sonic has already had and should still have. An unused Eggman voice clip reveals that the Wisp's Hypergon energy is more powerful than Chaos energy. This isn't true at all, Super Sonic can prove. The Hover Wisp is so broken in 3D, it feels so satisfying to use. Although you can run out of it pretty quickly, so you gotta get more. Thankfully, they spawn more. Although I hate how, like, I hate the theme, whatever, that plays when you're playing as a wisp. I don't know why it stops the music of the level. The sound effects, the repetition of the sound effects that you hear when you're using a wisp, especially with the pink wisp, it doesn't really sound that great, so I don't understand why they thought that was a good idea. The thing is that it's kind of slippery controlling the hover wisp, because it keeps on moving in a direction even when you hit the opposite direction. Like, you could tell that I was still moving to the right, even though I clearly pressed left. And when you bump into a wall with the hover wisp, you get bounced backwards. And so it makes it feel nerve-wracking trying to dodge the enemies that you're flying up towards, especially in the next level. Like the next level that uses the wisp a lot. But yeah, this is a pretty good wisp. I mean, I came into this game expecting to hate most of the wisps. Like, I thought this game was going to be good in spite of the wisps. But to be honest, most of the wisps in this game are actually pretty good. The only one that's genuinely terrible is the laser wisp, because you can't rotate it in a full 360 degrees, so you can't aim it wherever you want, and it's hard to tell how you're supposed to fire it when you want. But like, most of the wisps are pretty good. Like the rocket wisp, there's nothing wrong with it. The hover wisp is satisfying. The drill, I've never had any problems with it. The purple wisp, I've never really had any problems with either. You got these metal unkillable enemies, and they're really good for homing attack chains, because you can't kill them, and so you can't make it so that you can't homing attack chain them anymore. Which is really good if you screw up the homing attack chain at the very end, because it means that you haven't made the game unwinnable. A switch that only creates rings, and later on there's going to be a switch that all it does is create a red rain. Like, that feels wrong to me. Like, I think switches should only really be there to progress with the level. Like, see? It creates rings and a red rain. Like, why does it arbitrarily hide it from you? But yeah, I like this level. I like how it's entirely dedicated to the hover wisp. So even though it has a lot of blocks in it, it feels very open. Almost got knocked into a spike ball there. See what I mean? It's easy to get lost and not know where you're supposed to go in this level. Like, your Sonic instincts might be telling you to go right, but you're always going up, so like anything can happen. You always push forwards, even when you're homing attacking. Like in most games, after you homing attack, you get stopped completely. But in this game, you keep on pushing forwards after you homing attack, which can make it kind of anxiety-inducing finishing the homing attack chain, because you might get sent into the enemy, and like suddenly you're not in ball form anymore.
Indeed I could, but I'm right here behind this generator.
That line is so awkward. Like, it's so redundant for him to say that. And Sonic, as a hedgehog, would have better hearing than a human. So how does he not hear Eggman? Why is he looking backwards? And why does he think that it's Tails who's humming? And why doesn't Tails... I mean, Tails notices him, but at the very last second. Both Sonic and Tails are portrayed as brain-dead stupid for not noticing Eggman when there's a glowing purple stuff. Like, you'd think they would have noticed him. This is a scene that really would have been better off with a visual director.
What have you done to him? Me? I did nothing at all. Unless shooting him with my mind control beam.
And again, another forced joke.
Does it?
Like, this is kind of... This isn't making Eggman look menacing at all.
Your best friend. This turned out much better than I
And this is kind of overly cartoony and whimsical. Sonic is going really fast. And I guess he's quick-stepping. Doesn't really look like it though. But it just takes you out of the scene, because it's supposed to be a dramatic scene full of tension and making you feel sad that they're forced to fight. But then not only does that happen, but this happens. Everyone was disappointed at this. Even people who defend colors were devastated that they didn't get a cool fight with Tails. And of course he has to say nose hair, because apparently just saying funny words makes the joke funny. This game's humor is so lazy. But it was nice that Sonic was holding Tails when he fell into his arms and he had his eyes closed. It at least did a good job showing that Sonic cares about Tails. But it was such a missed opportunity. Like, we could have seen how good Tails was as a fighter. Or even saw new abilities that he showed.
We didn't bet.
What a jerk. I hate that line. And plus it's kind of confusing how, like, earlier he said, and wreck that plan, right? And yet earlier than that, he was like, doubting Sonic and doubting that Eggman had an evil plan. So which is it? I really hated this boss when I first played it. And that's because it's a running boss. So it reminded me of the running bosses of Sonic Unleashed. And in Sonic Unleashed, they were entirely scripted. There was no way that you could get closer to the boss in the 3D sections. You could boost all you wanted, and you'd just be wasting your boost. The only thing you used boost for in the 3D sections was damaging the boss, and I'm not sure why quick-stepping alone gives you points. That's really stupid. But anyways, I found it so unintuitive that you could actually get closer to this boss in the 3D sections. Because this game is just taking your Sonic instincts and betraying you. In the very previous main 3D Sonic game, you were taught that you couldn't get closer to the boss in the 3D sections until they wanted you to. So how are you supposed to know that all of a sudden they changed the rules on you, and that if you constantly press B in midair, or boost, then you'll get close enough to the boss so you can homie attack it during the 3D sections? This boss dragged on for 5 minutes and I died. And then on my second attempt I died 6 minutes in. And then it wasn't until my third attempt that I discovered by complete accident that there was actually a white wisp that could randomly spawn. A white wisp that didn't spawn earlier when I was in the exact same section. Like, do I even have to say what's wrong with that? So I boosted because I figured I got boost, so why not? And that's when I discovered by accident that you can actually boost up to the boss. The 3D sections are so dull and boring when you don't know that you can do that, because otherwise all you're doing is quick stepping. Like, there's no input other than quick stepping so that you can dodge the fire. And it's kind of hard to, like, the fire is orange and the rings that appear are yellow. So they kind of blend in with each other, and so it tricks you into quick stepping into the fire. And there's not nearly enough rings in this boss fight. Like, there's enough rings in the 3D section at the very beginning of the boss fight, but after that there's just random 10 rings scattered around the very start of it. And there's no rings in the 2D sections at all, which is very cheap considering how many projectiles you have to dodge in them. When you get hit in this boss fight, you lose the rings, so you can never get them back. Because obviously you're constantly running forwards, so you just leave your rings behind. And like, you're constantly running forwards on a road that's constantly destroying itself, rather than you running forwards along like an auto-scrolling section. The 2D sections are kind of like the Sonic Advance 2 boss fights, but at least the ground doesn't constantly slope to screw up your jump. But you still feel weighed down because it takes so long to get to where you want to go. So Sonic feels slow. I don't know, I just found this boss really enraging when I first played it. It can be fun when you know what to do, but it's just so dull, these 3D sections, when you don't know that you can attack during them. I guess the music is alright. Something I haven't mentioned about the cutscenes of this game is that you can't skip them at all. So, not only are they not very funny, Or at least not to me anyways. But there's also the fact that the cutscenes, they drag on far too long. And they aren't really necessary. Like, a lot of them are pretty pointless. And just pad themselves out. A lot of the times they pad themselves out by telling you stuff that you already know. And elaborating too much on the same exposition. They remind you of Eggman's plan over 4 times in this game. In fact, over 5 times. To the point where you get tired of it. Like, it's just a weak excuse to have more cutscenes. They take hours to tell a simple story. And because of all that, it makes it really inexcusable that you can't skip the cutscenes at all. Especially since they make the plot this way to appeal to kids. But the thing is that kids, they're more likely to enjoy games like Grand Theft Auto. Shadow the Hedgehog would appeal more to kids than this game. So, it's kind of clueless to have a plot like this to appeal to the kids. The kids are more likely to want to skip the cutscenes, and they're just going to be annoyed that they can't. So, how did Tails build a translator machine anyways? The only translator machine that we have is Google Translate. And that's because a human has already translated everything and just put it into the machine. The only way a translator machine could make sense is if he invented a machine that reads brain waves and translates that into English words. If the machine is reading directly from the brain waves of the wisps, how is it making any translation mistakes at all? And speaking of that, in the Japanese version of the game, mistranslations are puns. So they make a lot more sense. Translation jokes are realism jokes. They're about how language works. I don't really think that suits a Sonic game. Sonic games have their humor centered around its actual universe and the characters that live in it. With the translation joke, it has to be grounded in reality. You have to understand where the error comes from. And with stuff like where flowers water them with dances, you have no idea where that translation joke even comes from, so the only joke is randomness. Randomness by itself is not funny. Finding secret patterns within the randomness is. So it's ultimately better to have the mistranslations be puns so you can at least understand where they come from. Also, Sonic always calls them wisps in the Japanese version, which makes sense. He's being polite. He's not being disrespectful by refusing to call them by their actual name. Sonic, Tails, and like everyone is a lot more polite in the Japanese version. Like, Sonic doesn't make you want to punch his face in. When you're in a map screen or in a level, you'll hear Eggman doing PA announcements, which gets some pretty dark humor in it, and I actually think they're the funniest jokes in the game. But the problem is that you can't really hear them, because they're muffled and cut off if you go too far away from where they're originating from. So, go figure, the only good jokes in the game, and they get cut off and you can barely hear them. Well, there are a few good jokes, but my point is, during one of the PA announcements, Eggman mentions a yellow car with the license plate 1NOM155 is about to get hit by an asteroid. This is a reference to Crazy Taxi, as one of the characters in it, Axel, drives the taxi with the same license plate. Like, I like this, I like how much you can spam the homing attack, but this boss is so scripted that you can't just constantly spam the homing attack and then win. Even though there's no logical reason that Sonic shouldn't be able to do that. All the airship is doing is going further away from it. Why can't he just continuously homing attack and go with it wherever it's going? He's already defying gravity by doing the homing attack in the first place, so you can't tell me that it's going to be unrealistic. I don't really get the point of Eggman putting, like, eyes on his airships. Like, the airships aren't really sentient or anything, so what's the point? Is he trying to make them look like robots so that they look more intimidating?
Hey, Sonic, did you give the guide your complaint?
Oh, I gave it to him pretty good.
God, I hate his voice in this game. He sounds like a whiny teenager. Like, he sounds like someone... He sounds like someone complaining about homework and stuff. Like a surfer dude. I like how Tails reacts to that. Like, he's all sad about the fact that he was brainwashed. But then, of course, they have to mention the word burps in a Sonic game, And they have to drag out the joke and explain it, having 3 different lines afterwards.
It made no sense.
Even if you found it funny the first time, you're going to get tired of it because they drag it out for so long.
Generators.
So,
That is so unnecessary.
Tell me about
That is so forced.
Eggman.
Like, they have to mention it again.
Electro beam
The
generator.
writers are so proud of their own jokes. It really does feel arrogant.
hold a whole planet.
If Ian Flynn wrote this story, he would have referenced Sonic CD. Sonic would never say that without referencing Sonic CD.
Already leveled 2.
So, if my math is correct, that leaves us 3 more of those bad boys to take out.
Nobody said there.
I like how he says bad boys there, because it sounds like he's adorably trying to imitate Sonic's way of speaking.
Once I start moving, I don't need much time.
But most of this dialogue is pretty pointless. And speaking of pointless,
Soon the mind control weapon will be full
of course he has soup.
from the aliens.
We get reminded so many times what Eggman's plan is. It's so awkward how he says that. And it's like we already know. Why is he saying that when he already knows what his plan is? I like Eggman's response to that. But Cubot, he actually points out a major plot hole. What reason do we have to believe that he has enough energy to brainwash the whole planet? Why would Eggman program him to know that song? I like how they have Orbot install a voice chip to him. Because it gives us the impression that they're really good friends, because he's comfortable doing that for him. I don't really get why he sings that song, though. Like the Dem Bones folktale song.
I think that's the wrong chip.
See, that's a joke that actually makes me laugh. And I like Eggman's response to that.
On the bright side, he's
But,
much more
like, I just really like Orbot's response to that. Like, I was not expecting him to be so quirky and endearing.
No need for those idiots. In just a few hours,
He basically just implied that he was going to kill them.
control when it is
So, at least that was a menacing villain moment.
the greatest amusement.
But, like, Orbot and Cubot don't need to be fed or anything. So, just because he's brainwashed a whole bunch of humans doesn't mean that he's going to have no need for Orbot and Cubot anymore. They're still going to be a lot more cost-effective than humans. And of course they have to make Eggman look like such a sad, pathetic old man because he laughs, and of course he has to cough afterwards. It doesn't really look like he's a good villain anymore, which kind of defeats the purpose of making him the main villain again.